These are $20 IEMs, and these cost more than 16 times as much, $329. And in between, I've got everything from just over $20 to $80 to $160, all the way up to $300. But these aren't just some random earphones. These are some of the most hyped IEMs at every price point. I spent an unhealthy amount of time figuring out which models get recommended the most across YouTube and the rest of the internet. So we've got a nice selection of 2 to 3 IEMs in each price bracket, and I want to put them head to head to find out two things. First, which ones are the best at each price point? And second, what happens when you compare the very best IEMs across different price tiers? I mean, considering how much hype some of these got, at least a few of them should be able to punch way above their price class. Okay, let's start with the first price bracket, the entry-level tier. Each of these comes in at around $20 to $25, and honestly, you can't go wrong with any of these at this price point. First up, the Moondrop Chew 2. The Chew has been a staple for a while now, and the second generation is no different. I have to say though that I hate the included tips. They're too stiff and I can't get a reliable fit, so I ended up switching to these spin fit tips instead, which is kind of ironic, considering that these cost almost half as much as the IEMs themselves. Anyway, the Chew 2 has a neutral-ish sound signature overall, but it sounds a bit tinny. I like it for most music, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't work for gaming, at least not for me. I really struggle to pick up on fine directional cues with these. The next one on the list though, the Tangsu Warner, works great for gaming. It's really easy to pinpoint footsteps with these. It almost feels like I can track opponents through walls, which is obviously huge in FPS games like Valorant. I gotta say though that these don't have the most enjoyable sound signature for longer sessions. They do sound somewhat canny, probably thanks to that 2.3 kHz bump. This makes vocals sound a little too forward, and I find that fatiguing over time. For gaming, that tuning actually works really well though, and I clearly prefer it over the Chew 2. But for music, it's basically a tie for me, so overall the Warner takes second place. And first place goes to this one here, the 02 by 7 Hz. It works just as well for gaming as the Warner, but I find it much less fatiguing. And for music, I strongly prefer it over both the Warner and the Chew 2. It really comes down to the tuning. It's slightly dark with a strong bass and deep extension well below 30 Hz, but it still has a lot of brilliance in the treble region, so it's a well-balanced sound signature overall, and it actually sounds pretty refined, especially for an IEM that's just over $20. So yeah, it's kind of surprising to me, but the Chew 2 is actually my least favorite out of these three, which really says a lot about how good the others are. So I'm going to take these into the next price bracket and compare them to some IEMs that are a good bit more expensive. Okay, next on the list are these IEMs that are like 3x the price of the entry-level IEMs. Relatively speaking, this is the biggest price jump in this video. And yeah, that definitely shows. All of these got some nice braided cables, and all of them are using some kind of multi-driver setup, instead of the single dynamic driver you get in the $20 class. And this one, the SimGod EW300, even comes with swappable tuning nozzles, so it's a bit like having two IEMs in one. SimGod actually recommends using the pink nozzle specifically for gaming, but honestly, I completely disagree. To me, the pink nozzle sounds too dark for gaming. It has lots of bass, but not enough treble to balance it, so it's on the verge of sounding muddy. And this makes it harder to pick up on directional cues in-game. For music, it kind of works, but I definitely prefer a more neutral sound. If you swap to the red nozzles, it's still lots of bass, but the red nozzles work much better for gaming and for music as well. With the red nozzles, these are actually excellent for gaming, and despite the strong bass, it's still very easy to tell where steps and gunshots are coming from. But there's something in the treble that makes them sound a bit shouty or tinny, which gets fatiguing quickly. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I prefer this one, the Zero Red by Truth-Ear. With these, vocals sound a lot smoother, but are still very detailed. And these work just as well for gaming as the EW300. The Zero Red also has a strong bass, but here it's the deepest bass that's elevated, which I much prefer. This gives you this nice bass rumble without making voices sound muddy or boomy. Big fan of this tuning. And honestly, for the price, these are fantastic. These are actually the least expensive in this price bracket, and I didn't expect to like them this much. But we still got the Hexa. It's also made by Truth Ear, but at $90 it's the most expensive one we've looked at so far. And when I try to be as objective as possible, I gotta say it's probably the best one yet. It's very resolving, sounds super transparent and clear, and I can totally see why people are hyping these so much. But honestly, I kinda prefer the Zero Red. I just find it more enjoyable. For gaming, the Hexa does a slightly better job, I give them that. It's super easy to pinpoint steps and gunshots with these, but I gotta say, the Zero Red is not far behind really, and because of the more relaxed tuning, I can use the Zero Red for longer gaming sessions before feeling fatigue. And for music, I just enjoy the Zero Red more. It's more fun to listen to, so I just have to go with the Zero Red here. The Hexa gets a very strong second place though. But yeah, we can't forget about the Zero 2, the winner of the $20 bracket. And I gotta say, these can definitely hang with the more expensive IEMs. I'm using an RME interface with two outputs that can independently be volume controlled, and if you account for the different sensitivities and quickly switch between these IEMs, the difference in sound quality is honestly smaller than you would expect from the 3x price increase. I gotta say though that the more expensive Zero Red sounds a bit like a more refined version of the Zero 2. The bass is less boomy and the treble clarity is improved as well. And it actually makes perfect sense that these sound a bit alike because despite coming from different brands, both of these are tuned by Critical and that shows. Okay, we're jumping up to the $200 mark now, give or take a few dollars. And I have to admit I came into this bracket with a bit of a bias. See, the Mezzi Alba is a single dynamic driver IEM, and the only other IEMs in this comparison that are using a single dynamic driver are the $20 ones. Every other IEM from the $60 bracket onwards uses a multi-driver setup of some sort, so I wasn't exactly expecting to be blown away. But yeah, these proved me wrong. Rationally, I know that the driver setup says almost nothing about the sound quality, and these really are a perfect example of that. But you know, let's actually start with the Ziggert Odyssey first. This is your classic multi-driver hybrid IEM, and it's pretty good. However, the Odyssey has a slightly darker, warmer tuning to it. The bass depth is great, it goes down super low with a good amount of impact, and voices still manage to sound clear, but the mid-range and treble take a bit of a backseat, which makes it sound slightly muddy. Still, these are some really good earphones, can't deny that, but they're a bit too dark for my personal taste. And that also holds them back for gaming as well. So this time the choice is actually pretty easy for me. I definitely prefer the Mezzi Alba. It has a much better tonal balance. It's more neutral, but it still has a good amount of bass. It's just a nicely balanced, very refined tuning, and it's easy to listen to. I'm honestly very impressed with what Mezzi managed to squeeze out of a single dynamic driver. And for gaming, the Alba is excellent as well. Directional cues are on point, and it's really easy to track your opponents with these. The bass might be a bit more than what I typically like for gaming, but it isn't overshadowing footsteps, so that's fine. And another plus is the small size. These are super comfortable, and I can easily use them for hours on end, so the Mezzi Alba easily takes the win here. But how does it stack up against the more affordable Zero Red from the previous bracket? Well, to keep it short, the Alba is better. This mostly comes down to more brilliance, sparkle, or whatever audiophile buzzword you want to use. But yeah, it has more treble clarity, which makes it sound better in comparison. However, the difference is probably not as big as you would like for close to 3 times the price, but it's a noticeable upgrade. Okay, now we're entering the big boy leagues, $300 and above. Some audiophiles might laugh at this, casually dropping like $300 on a cable, but by any normal person standards, this is a lot of money for a pair of earphones. And we've got 2 new contenders here, the Kiwi Ears Astral and the Ziggert Horizon. And I'm bringing the Mezzi Alba along to see how it holds up in this price tier. Starting with the Astral, first thing you're gonna notice is that it sounds very similar to the Alba. I mean, look at these graphs. These tunings are extremely similar, and both sound amazing. For gaming, both are fantastic. I've been going back and forth between them, and there's generally no difference when it comes to locating footsteps. For music, it's a similar story. These two are so close that it really just comes down to the song or my mood. So it just has to be a tie. But since the Alba is smaller, more comfortable, and significantly cheaper, I gotta give the win to the Mezzi Alba. But then there's the Ziggett Horizon, the most expensive pair in this whole comparison, coming in at roughly $330. And yeah, it's my favorite. Who would have thought? These just add that extra bit of refinement over the Astral and the Alba. But it's kind of crazy how close the graphs between these IEMs are. Like, I've seen some IEMs that have more difference between the left and right earpiece than there is between these. And this goes to show how similar these really sound. So the Horizon is only a marginal upgrade, that's for sure, but there is a perceivable increase in clarity. When a track gets really busy, the Alba and the Astral can start sounding a bit overwhelmed, but the Horizon stays super clean. And for gaming, it's amazing. It's my favorite for gaming so far. I will say though that for gaming, the gap between these IEMs is smaller than it is for listening to music, but the Horizon still takes the crown. So it is the overall winner for both gaming and listening to music. A surprising second place goes to the Mezzi Alba, which is a pleasant surprise, I think, considering the price. Bugs me a bit though that the Astral got so overshadowed by the Alba and the Horizon, because it's actually a great IEM, and if it went for the other two, I think I would have been super stoked with these. But yeah, a few dollars more gets you the Horizon, which I think is totally worth the upgrade, or you can just save a good amount of cash and go with the Mezzi Alba instead. So it kind of sits in a tough spot. But yeah, I guess that's what you can expect when putting some of the most hyped IEMs against each other. This really was a battle of good IEMs versus exceptionally good IEMs. Thanks for watching, bis zum nächsten Video.